Let us pray together. Divine mystery, who was, is, and is still yet to come. We give you thanks for this holy time together on this holiest of holy type of nights. Draw us close by means of Zoom. Help us truly to feel in the same room, as we would hear the rush of angel wings and see the glory, your glory, etched on each face. May the words of my mouth and the meditations of our hearts combined be acceptable as a gift unto you. Amen. I wondered if it rained so hard the night of Jesus' birth in a ramshackle cave or shed. It was likely the rainy season, and on occasion, streams could overflow during downpours. And as I sat preparing for this evening in this beautiful fortified barn, what a torrent on all sides here in Columbia, Maryland. I know many of you are tuning in from other places, but trust me, flash flooding seemed so possible. I was trying in that space to imagine the vulnerability of it all, the uncertainty and life-threatening reality of childbirth in a vulnerable space, animals braying, saturation. And here I was, like many of you, snug, perhaps a little lonely, waiting for my family to deliver fresh focaccia from the oven for our communion table. And they were stuck at home as the rains came down. And then a little drip developed in the center of the sanctuary, where no doubt one of you would have been sitting this evening. Perhaps it would have been you, tapped on the head or shoulder with a little Christmas blessing. Can you imagine it now? A little reminder from the heavens of the most solid of plans requiring rain checks. It is contained, there is a bucket underneath. And now that the rains have stopped being so forceful, so too has the leak. Yes, I'm glad our outdoor prayer stations were postponed to New Year's Eve. And yet next Thursday, percentage of precipitation. Weeping spells of the departure of 2020. Friends, in a year, what a year, what a year. Falsehoods and fear. We have measuredly safeguarded ourselves on the inside out, body and spirit, building up protective layers for our heads and hearts. And yet still trying to leave a comfortable space, a gap to one another each week as we would worship, and the slivers and slices of people that we can see from here on up, as tempting as it may be to isolate away entirely, not from each other and not even from the news as we know it in this weary world. Too much is in the balance. Even if our weary hearts crave the inward pull and do the soul work of solitude, we have to keep looking to our modern messengers to keep us in the chain of being. We stay tuned to the world to know the latest. Over 300,000 dead in this country alone from a virus that has demanded over and over again that we take it seriously. A weary year filled with images of terror enacted on Black and brown neighbors. If we stay clued out altogether, we would miss the modern day Herods, nervous about a new life and a new era waiting to be born, trying to do absolutely everything to secure power. But if we pause as I would do here where there is no longer a leak dripping. If we hold on to a hush, a thrill may yet be born. A thrill of hope injected into our imaginations as healthcare workers receive the first of the COVID vaccine. And if we tuned out entirely, we would miss the announcements that come to punctuate the power of the Spirit when people of faith band together. Perhaps you saw the news of Juanita and Clive Thompson as they emerged from a church basement. They had been in that basement and another for 2.5 years in sanctuary. They had originally fled Jamaica in 2004 because of gang violence, and for 14 years they lived with their children, working steadily until they, like someone I'd shared about in the fall, Ben Sarcia Han, received a citation and a notice that they would be taken back to a country they no longer really know. 7 of their children still here on American soil. 14 years they'd worked until a policy shift and the powers and the principalities demand something different. Fear and falsehoods. The possibility and potential. When a new sanctuary movement of Philadelphia stepped up with legal support and the means for safety. Their mission is to work to end injustices against immigrants, regardless of immigration status, express radical welcome for all, and ensure the values of dignity, justice, and hospitality are lived out in practice and upheld in policy. If we tuned out entirely, we would miss the thrills that are resounding. The news of Christmas is international, universal even, and God sings a thrill of hope through us, and the weary world manages to rejoice. Hope is vocal, even in a virus. It is born in the safe spaces of church basements. By staying in touch, we know that we are not alone. And the sacrifices, large and small, as we miss seeing friends and family. Even now, as I stand here, I miss you all so desperately. And I strain to hear how the ancestors who have populated this land in centuries past, how these stones, as we've so often turned to them, how they would be speaking. Perhaps they would echo the cry of civil rights activist and the first African-American female Episcopal priest. Polly Murray was ordained in 1977. Queer, passionate, and persistent, she penned these words. Hope is a song in a weary throat. Give me a song of hope and world where I can sing it. She continues, give me a song of faith and a people to believe in it. Give me a song of kindliness and a country where I can live it. Give me a song of hope and love and a brown girl's heart to hear it. Here was someone on the inside of the church, and yet by so many accounts able to bring a perspective not otherwise represented. From the outside to bear truths and light about what it means to be spiritual community, finding hope even as the throat is weary, the body is numb, the heart is faint, perhaps at the point of collapse. There are some things only Black and brown voices can teach us, as they do at Christmas. As our brown Jesus comes in the midst of angry empire, a thrill of hope nonetheless sounds. And we find through Jesus that it takes the voices who are most threatened to be the voices of Christmas. I remember years of growing up going to Christmas Eve service. And I recall the singing, how we longed to be singing in one another's company. I recall that my father would most years sing "O Holy Night," and predictably, in the middle of it, even though I knew it was coming, when he collapsed with the weight of the good news being borne onto his knees. Fall on your knees, oh, hear the angel voices. If you have at no point been in touch with the bone weariness of our souls, if we have at no point imagined Mary, tired, dirty, yelling the pains of labor, we perhaps cannot know the excruciating reality of Christmas. We have never known the outside vantage point. We may miss the muddy manger. Stay tuned, my friends. Stay tuned as holy, oh, holy night. It arrests our attention, and the story plays in this song as in our time, the same legacies of hate and hope that are alive today. This song, "O Holy Night," has the background that a priest in a 19th century French town reached out to a wine commissioner to write a poem for the upcoming Christmas Mass. Placide Capua, an atheist, he studied the text in Luke and the very Christmas story we have heard tonight and penned powerful verses. He then turned to his composer friend, Adolphe Charles Adams, to put the words to music. And his Jewish friend, Adolphe, captured the sweeping nature of the story. And it was played at Mass, Christmas 1847. And it became so popular, it was played in so many different settings until one moment when the reality of the authors was revealed. An atheist and a Jew, suddenly the song was unfit and characterized as totally absent of the spirit of religion. Yet, even though it was banned in France, people kept singing it, perhaps in the alleyways or in the aftermath, if you will. For from the weary throat, God sings a thrill of hope that cannot be silenced. And the weary world rejoices. Eventually, American Unitarian minister John Sullivan Dwight discovered this song and penned the English translation. A strong abolitionist, the lines he penned, "Truly he taught us to love one another. His law is love and his gospel is peace. Chains shall he break, for the slave is our brother, and in his name all oppression shall cease." It caught on, especially in the North, as the Civil War approached. A bloody and divisive time, America's original sin of racism lived out on the battlefield. But from weary throats, the sound of hope. The world as Jesus would have known it, weary of Roman occupation, weary of religious oppression, weary of awaiting a Messiah, but God sings and says we don't have to keep doing things the same way. Friends, we don't have to keep doing things the same way. And a piece of us, although we will always yearn for what was before this pandemic time, we don't have to keep doing things the same way. The ones that aren't working, the systems that need breaking open, the love that must shine. Stories. What I think makes this "O Holy Night" different from many others is that it gives us the invitation forward. It doesn't end with the narration of Luke 2. It points us forward into the ministry of Jesus. Follow the voices this very day, it seems to say, that are calling for oppression to cease. Be attentive always to the voices from the weary throats of those under the crushing weights, barely able to breathe. Yes, God has taught us to love one another. A law of love and a gospel of peace. Even when surrounded by hatred and violence, then as now, we are called to treat each other with that same love and peace that Christ has brought us at Bethlehem. We stay tuned as much as we might want to look away. We prick up our ears as much as we might want to stop them up. We ask the Spirit to put our hearts in tune. It continues in the lives of those like Clive and Juanita Thompson, who 3 days ago finally emerged from a church basement sanctuary, no longer with the threat of deportation. Friends, there is a weary world out there in need of hope. And there are friends and family who are shackled by grief and depression and loneliness, and people we don't even know, who are held in bondage by systemic oppression and enduring prejudice. A song of hope persists. It's in our hearts. We stoke it today with the memories and realization of a manger. We surround ourselves in song like the one penned by an atheist and a Jew, brought to us by a Unitarian preacher, about a Jew, teenage unwed mother, and a carpenter in a little Middle Eastern town centuries ago. And yet, today, the story continues. First, as it emerges from a weary throat, and as it, with the angels' resounding voices, amplifies it in love until it echoes through us and it envelops the world.